Welcome, Risers. It's that time once again for the Agent Rise podcast. I'm your host, Neil Mathwig, joined by a very special guest today, Marissa Canario. So, Marissa, you've got such great experience with team building and building some mega teams. And so today we're going to have a great conversation around the hurdles that we need to get through when it comes to team building. With that, could you give us a little bit of background on who you are and how awesome you are and all the amazing things you've done?
Well, absolutely. I mean, no pressure.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. I'm so excited. Kind of happened into my real estate role. It's so funny because everyone's like, how did you get here? What was the path? And it wasn't anything earth shattering or very exciting, right? I came from the insurance business, built a very large team within the health insurance industry. And one day woke up and just couldn't see myself doing it another day. And I had previously sold real estate to get myself through college. And I came back to real estate with this goal of selling houses and not leading anything. And except for my clients and myself. And that lasted for like 6 weeks. And I joined Keller Williams. And the reason was, training and opportunity. And I got put in front of one of now the largest expansion team owners, the recruiter that brought me in said, hey, you have to do this. This is who you are, right? And I just kind of was like on this path of finding what I was doing next. I was like, sure, yeah, and that's kind of how I landed where I landed. And I spent almost 7 years building one of the largest expansion networks inside of Keller Williams in various different roles. And my time spent in that 7 years spanned agent coaching, leadership coaching, and building the actual core of the mega team. And what that has brought to me is this huge passion to share with other people more what we learned. Right? Like, I think that it's so awesome to be like, we did this, we did that. Yeah, we did some really cool things. We built one of the largest expansion networks land area wise to exist in a franchise system. Right? At the same time, kind of my passion now is what did we learn and how did we fail so that we can pass that on to other team owners? And that's kind of where I think this whole conversation comes together.
That's great. What do you think is the biggest roadblock? Let's start there. What do you think is the biggest roadblock that teams run into?
I think that the biggest roadblock initially is honestly the onboarding process. I think that we have this idea of what it looks like. And I think that as visionaries, a lot of the time, we're sitting here going, okay, I have this awesome value proposition. I know that I can help people sell more houses. And we kind of lose it in the onboarding process, right? And then the agents kind of end up feeling lost. And we don't know why, because we're sitting here going, okay, well, I have all these things. And sometimes the deliverability of onboarding kind of gets lost in that shuffle. And so that was one of our biggest roadblocks. And the more teams I talk to, I think it's their biggest roadblock as far as what does our process look like? How are we educating people as to what this looks like? For me, I believe that onboarding is a never ending experience. I think that we're constantly having to put ourselves in front of people in a different way all of the time. And we have to keep educating and we have to keep almost re-recruiting. And so when I say onboarding, I mean developing an entire program around, getting agents, but keeping agents.
Yes, yes. We always talk about, recruiting, retention, and agent production, right? Are like kind of like the three major things. And that retention, I never thought about it as the onboarding. If you don't do the onboarding right, the retention goes away, right?
It's funny because one of the things that we used to say is onboarding is like, there's always we use the mentality of a boat, right? So we're in a boat and there's somebody drilling a hole in the boat every single day, right? Like there's something out there that's happening. There's someone offering something different. There's something out there that's kind of like the shiny object, right? And so we're busy bailing the boat. We're not paying attention to the fact that people are maybe getting into other boats while we're busy doing that. And I think that that's where the retention piece, we bring people in and the expectation is, oh, they've got that or they've got this. And we're so busy running it that we forget that we're kind of re-recruiting these same people every day. And that doesn't look like huge, lifts every day. It's bringing people in and giving them a roadmap of here's what happens next, right? It's showing up. It's making sure that they feel connected to, and not just here's your email, here's your logins. We do our calls on Fridays, right? And I can say that because I've done it. And then, just kind of, right? So
Yeah.
developing training, developing systems, developing that opportunity, and then showing back up for people all the time. And that's celebrating wins. And that's talking about, what we're doing for this month of the year. It's all different things, right? So I think that that's where we lose some of that sometimes. And I also think that part of onboarding, if I'm the team lead, rainmaker, whatever you want to call it, I have to be participating, right? Like my face has to be part of it. And they need to know that I'm there.
That's great. And so this isn't something that somebody else on the team should do. This is something that the team leader should really be committed to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that, obviously team leaders, their talent is needed kind of everywhere on the team. And so in the onboarding process, definitely you have your roles, right? You have transaction coordinators that show up. You have, directors of operations that show. There's all different roles. But I do think as the team owner, there has to be calls with you. There has to be video from you. There has to be emails from you, because a lot of the time that's kind of like the glitz of the team, right? You've built this really cool thing. So you have to keep showing up in front of your people, even in ways like that, right? One thing that we created was text messages. So, like, if something really cool happened, right, we would get myself and the team owner at the time, we would get a text from the transaction coordinator, from the DOO, that's like, hey, so and so did this today. We're really proud of them. Could you send a quick text? Like, stuff like that is super, super important. And that's a huge retention piece.
That's fantastic. You have, I'm learning something here from you, because I think when looking back on the teams that I've been a part of, I delegated the onboarding. I had a transaction coordinator or somebody else on the team uh, help them and help them get onboarded. And I'm looking back on that as a mistake from the team leader. Like, I still should have had somebody help concierge
Yeah.
wise, but the communication, I just put it all on him or her. I should have taken that back. What kind of like 30, 60, 90-day plans do you implement? Is that important in the onboarding as well?
That's so important. I really think that the 30, 60, 90 is key. We ran without one for an embarrassingly long period of time. I just want you to know that. The 30, 60, 90 to me is like, for us, it became a living, breathing document within the organization, right? So, like, here's your first 30 days. This is exactly what it's going to look like. This is exactly what to expect and exactly who's going to show up, right? And by doing that, that also allows us to say, okay, this was the expectation. We've met all of ours. Did you meet yours? And it became a earn your spot on the team document, right? Just because you made it onto the team doesn't mean you get to stay on the team. And it also allowed us to see holes in the onboarding process. And so the 30, 60, 90 became, for the organization level, leadership level, this is who we need and how we need to show up. And for the agent level, it became, right, did you do your phone calls? Did you do your open houses? Did you do these expectations that we've given you the tools for? And if you haven't, maybe this isn't the home for you. And if we haven't, shame on us. And right. So that became kind of the accountability document.
It's interesting. I had a question written down here too about, where do you see teams plateau the most? And I had written down that I thought it was maybe lead flow,
Mhm.
conversion, holding the agents accountable, leadership and hiring. Would After looking at that list, would you still say that that onboarding trumps all of that, is where the teams plateau?
I think yes, because I think that onboarding feeds all of that, right? Like, I truly believe, like, if your onboarding system isn't locked in, your lead deployment and conversion won't be locked in. Like, the agent might not necessarily know the expectation, right? And if your onboarding hasn't been really strong, they might not know where to go for coaching, or they might not know what kind of exists out there. So I think that onboarding feeds all of that. And I used to not believe that. And then I onboarded my the year before I became the national director. As a regional director, I onboarded 149 people. And I'm going, oh, oh no. Like the issue is me. It's like that Taylor Swift song, right? Like I'm the issue. Because we weren't doing those things. And I think that that's where it kind of all fell apart. And as soon as we pivoted and started that hyper focus, everything else got easier because we were able to train the expectation, right? The ISAs were able to do their job differently. We were able to watch conversion differently. The expectations around everything in the company were clear and completely changed.
Wow, wow. I would have picked lead flow as the biggest breakdown. So I'm you're teaching me something here and I'm loving this.
I used to
What do
think
you
lead flow too, by the way. Like that
did
was
you?
always
Okay.
like we were on lead flow, lead flow, lead flow. And I'm like, wait, they don't know what to do with the leads.
Right, right, right. We gotta back up here, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
like, just talking about lead management and lead flow, what do you think is the biggest gaps when it comes to lead flow? And, teams like I feel like you want your agents to not feel like they're drowning, but you also don't want a lead to slip through the crack, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you manage that?
So that's a very interesting question because I think that it looks so different by team based on lead source, based on all these different things. But one thing that I learned is that we had to become active participants in the lead flow generation conversion process. And what I mean by that, I think a lot of the time leads come in and we either round robin them or we assign them. And there's just kind of this expectation that they know what to do with them. And I think where we plateau the most there is we don't have a guided process. Like there is no, when this is a new lead, this is exactly what to do. And if you don't do it in X amount of time, it either moves to someone else or, something changes. And I think the biggest issue is not having someone that understands that in a director of lead generation role. I think the second you dip your toe into I'm going to spend money on leads, somebody has to become the owner. Because I think that lead generation is like a business within the business. And if you have the wrong hire in that role or you have the wrong person in that role, it becomes a funnel to nowhere. I mean, like really quickly. And you're sitting there going, okay, we spent tens of thousands of dollars. We have all of these leads. The organization that I ran, we had 600,000. And, you know, that's a massive database to manage, but by location, even it's a lot, right? My personal team, we have 11,000. And so looking at it, how do we deploy? We can't just assign this out. We have to be actively participating in this with the agents and making sure our automation's going out, our communication's going out. Are we phone calling? Is it with the right person? Right?
So the team leader or an ISA is in charge, like taking ownership of the leads, and then can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think that whenever you get into lead generation or lead conversion, right? If you're on like an aggregator type of system, somebody has to own the responsibility of the actual business system. And I think that I know what happened was we would just go buy leads and round robin them to agents. And there wasn't really a stopgap. We had 168 separate at one point lead generation websites because of the provider we were with. No longer, right? It's all that everybody's on one. But the thing is watching the conversion. Who somebody has to make sure that there's accountability to the agent of is the first phone call getting made? Are we going to a 13-day plan, assuming you use one? If you don't, I would suggest you do, right? Do we have a nurture program that is automated and ready so that we can ensure that every single lead is getting that? Because sometimes the agent doesn't know to do it or doesn't have the time to do it. Like when we get an agent to a certain level of leads, keeping up with the daily phone calls, text, emails, and going on their appointment is a full-time job. So are we ensuring that we're helping with that? And I think that until we really woke up to that, we had a really, really big problem with the plateauing in our conversion.
Interesting. Let's talk about how to build the team, right? I think we even start with who's the first hire? Like when we start this, where do we go first?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, right? Because I think there's two paths. I think that there is the path of it, you've got your path of other markets and you have your path of the market you're in. And I think that the two are very different. And so I can kind of speak to both. I think that when you are hyper local, I think the first thing that you have to do, if you have not grown at all, like this is assuming like you're buying leads, it's you and like a VA, right? I think my first step would be hiring a showing assistant, right? Because your time is so much better utilized out with listings if you can get somebody to work with your buyers, right? And you become that person. Like that person is your shadow essentially and kind of becomes you on the buy side. And as soon as you can get buyers off your plate, you can move to your next hire, which is going to be, right? You're training this person ultimately to probably become your first buyer's agent, right? And then we can start making that next hire. But I think sometimes we go straight to like director of operations. Well, there's no operations to direct, right? Like we have to get to the multiple sales with other people part, right? So I think that that's where that starts. I think VA and showing assistant. I think if you're going to expand, however, that changes, and you need to have kind of a 2-in-1 role of almost like a regional director, director of sales slash coach. And I think that like ultimately what I learned is that those two are not the same person eventually. But when you are brand new, say like I'm in Milwaukee, if I go to Chicago, I need someone who can kind of coach. I mean, I can help with that, right? But I also need someone with influence that can kind of be that director of sales. And so I think that that's kind of the path for those because again, without sales, I can be ops for a little bit, right? Like in my house, we're both in real estate. So we could figure it out for a minute while we kind of get there. And I think a lot of the time we go hire like that next executive hire. And that's a lot of money. I think that person comes, but I think you can do a lot with VAs while you build your sales team.
Yeah, and when you say VA, I think there's some that will say, like, I've always heard that you need to start with an admin. That's what you're saying. A VA is your admin just virtually, and you start there and you get somebody really solid that kinda covers you, right? And then you grow from there with the showing assistant, buyer's agents, and
Exactly.
from there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because typically your admin role is it's a pretty well paid role, right? And if you're the only one producing, all of your money's going to this person and not growing the team. So if you can start with a really solid virtual assistant, mine has been with me for years. She's an EA at this point, right? Like somehow she manages to know I'm a hard one too, because I'll be like, I need this, this, and this. And she'll be like, well, what's your idea? No idea. Just put something together and then I'll tell you if it's what I want. So I think like finding someone like that and then growing with salespeople and then it's the red light, green light concept, right? Like I came from KW, and there's a book. It's red, and it talks about that concept, and it's 100% accurate.
Yes, yes. And I had a whole section here that I wanted to talk to you about onboarding because I just looked at this as another thing that we're just gonna run through here and not really realizing that onboarding, how important it is. And so I just want to touch on onboarding one more time here because I see it as, you've got your VA, you're gonna bring somebody on maybe as a buyer's agent or as a showing assistant to start with and then eventually becoming a buyer's agent. And then I think you're going to go to listing agent, right? And you're going to find somebody that's going to help on the listing side. How do you in these different roles help them with the onboarding and be active so that because this is so important. I never realized. I think that's why I keep going back to it because it's an aha moment for me. Yeah.
I I think that as a team owner, especially early, of course, you're doing the entire thing, right? Like who you are the day you start the team versus who you are 5 years from now in this process are two very different things. And I can tell you, when we started as a nation, we didn't carry the same onboarding process that I did in my region. Like we were testing this theory, right? So I think that when people are coming on, when you're hiring a showing assistant, when you're hiring a listing agent, those first hires are going to be with you 100% of the time. Like there's no question, right? Like they're almost your shadow. So their onboarding is going to look a heck of a lot different than agent 3, 4, 5, 6. And so I think that those conversations are kind of like, you're helping me pioneer this, right? So you're a little bit of a guinea pig in a fun way because you get to help me dictate like, what does this process look like for everybody that we hire? So would you go on this journey with me? And one of those agents that I did that with now is starting his own team at Real. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing the same exact thing. And so basically what we did is we are going to build this like we have 1,000 agents, right? I don't care if there's one. We are building this like we are 1,000 agents, and we are going to follow this process the entire way through. So when we onboard, this is exactly what happens when you sign agreement. Day 1, expect this. Day 2, expect this. Day 3, expect this. And so I asked in the beginning, hey, I'm going to need you to kind of test this with me. And so it might not be a day, it might be 3, and I might be completely wrong. And I need you to be okay with that because we need to like get this process down, but also you'll be able to weigh in on it with me and help me design it. And people typically thought that was really cool. And so the first, I would say 10 were 100% me. I'm running the orientations. I'm running, right? Like you signed the contract. Now what, right? This is when your email turns on. These are the systems. This is the day we train on this system. This is the day. And for a high D, it's so important, but also it's a lot. And so working through that process with them, and then what I did is they became, right? Like whoever was strongest in, you know, using follow-up boss kind of became that trainer. And whoever was strongest in developing the database, that became that trainer. And so what we did is we kind of found people's strength in that process. And so I always hosted onboarding, like the 101 call, so to speak, the welcome call. And then I would have help training because sometimes too, like you have to be present as the owner or as the leader, but you don't need your voice on everything, right? Because it's the whole profit in your own backyard theory, right? So if I can get an agent in production to come talk about how he's getting 13% conversion because we had someone like that from his YLOBO and his follow-up boss. And this is what we do from day 1. And he becomes like the think tank of that, right? Now they're chasing him, right? And I'm coming in saying, you don't want to miss this. Like you have to go to this because these are the results. And so we became a partnership. And then over time, the director of operations led the onboarding call. I would show up in the beginning, welcome everybody, say my piece, and then she would take over as this is your transaction coordinator. This is where you find this. This is where you find that, right? And I think that we also recorded a lot. And so there was a library for everybody to go back to. And I was part of all of those videos. And so I think that that's where the evolution comes from, right? Like it's your process, you own it, and then you build it with people and kind of start handing it off, but still showing up.
Yes, and I think the challenge that I see with teams, like when I run into an agent that's on a team, am in the market, and they're not well educated. They're not like, I feel like I'm helping them through the transaction, and they feel like they just got thrown into it. They met the buyer yesterday on an online lead, and now they're writing an offer. And it's just, I think that's why a lot of agents get frustrated with teams, is because there's a lack of coaching, there's a lack of education, and it all gets fixed with onboarding and the way that you're building this.
It does. And I think there's such different specialties, like how to work your sphere versus how to handle when the phone rings from Zillow are two very different conversations, right? And so using some of our agent talent to do that, and they were more than happy to, because again, this is new, this is different, we can help people, right? And it only betters their business moving forward, right? Like they're learning and they're growing. And the goal is to identify more talent, right? And so they can grow their skills that way. And that's how we build the onboarding process. And that's how I would recommend anybody do it, because those people, right? Like today, moved to Real to build his own team. I talk to him every day. Every single day, he texts me his updates. and like what he's doing with onboarding. And if I do this way, do you think it'll work? And so that's the part where you're also relationship building.
Right, right. Wow, wow. And I always looked at it as like these teammates just need more training. They need, and really, if you think about it, they agents that are on teams should be the best, right?
Yeah.
They should have the most training. They should have the most structure, and they should be the best.
Well,
And
and
then
I
think
think that
do it
it's
this
so
way.
hard, like, for a team owner to do all of that. Like, in the beginning, you have to because there's nobody else to do it, right? But then as you grow, it's kind of this organic, I don't have to be that, right? Like, I just need to show up and I need to endorse and build up the people who are really good at that and get them in front of the team, right? And typically those are the people that want to grow also. And so it works out really well. And I think that for me, as soon as we realized that, and part of the onboarding of like, this is how every system works. This is exactly where you go for this. This is exactly where you go for that. Then there's not a question, and you're fielding way less phone calls of like, how do I log into this? Where is my dot loop? Like, you know what I mean? Like all of that is there. And that becomes so frustrating for agents when they feel like they don't even know the most basic of things.
And that's where I think agents feel like they gotta go hire an operations manager first probably too, right? Like,
Yeah.
'cause they don't know how to structure all that, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
we have this cool thing now called ChatGPT or Claude or other things that can give you, right? Like Barry Jenkins gave me the best prompt. It's like Prompt Cowboy or something like that, where you can go and give it the scenario and it writes it and then you go put it back. Like, look at that. Go watch. I mean, YouTube. There's a ton of videos from a ton of team owners on how they've structured this. The Ritz-Carlton book is really good. I think it's called like the gold standard or the new gold standard.
Yes, yes.
Disney, like, a lot of my ideas came from, like, Disney U, like, the book that was written, right? So, a little bit of research and a little bit of AI, I think that together you can kind of get what that looks like, and I think that when you're new, it will change, right? But going at it from the mindset of 1,000 agents, that was always the number in my head. I couldn't tell you why, like, my goal was to get larger than that, but, like, at 1,000, if I built everything like 1,000 people lived here, right, I wouldn't have to keep retooling it, and so, in the beginning, you're building it while you're flying, but if you're in that mindset, you won't have to change that much. Where you have to change a lot is when you just kind of start randomly doing it and then realizing that it's not great. One system that we had great luck with that I think is really important that everybody should look into is Go High Level, or High Level as it's now called. Just because that gave us the ability to do a lot of texting, a lot of emailing, a lot of video delivery so that we could stay really engaged. Beforehand, it was kind of pieced together through multiple systems. We used Monday too, but that's more operational, like back end operational, than it is front end onboarding operational. So that was a big, big tool for us.
I'm in love with Go High Level. We just brought it into Agent Rise here, and agents, I mean, it's so customizable and what you can do and how you can build it. And if you need any recommendations with Go High Level, I got you covered there, and that's fantastic. And we've talked a lot about the beginning of the team and building the team. Then I'd like to go in the direction of how do you expand that? I think there's a lot of fear that you've got to overcome, right? There's a lot of growth and risk that you're going to take. Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like and how do you start small and then just keep going?
Yeah, I think that, and I've said this before, I think that you almost have to be, I always say this to my mom, she's an agent too. And I'm like, you almost have to be like delusional in the level of success that you can have, right? Like there has to be this no limit mentality. Because I think the second that you say, I only want a small team or I only want, like, define small, right? And then all of a sudden these limits get put on you. And it's like, how do you break through that? And I think that the thing that I tell everybody is you have to be continually changing who you are and growing as you do this because you can't be the same person you were the day that you hired a showing assistant when you're hiring your 10th agent, right? And I think that so much personal growth goes into this and reflection. Like you have to get really, really, really comfortable being able to be aware of where you need to improve. right? Like there's not a lot of room for ego. And that's one of the things that I think kind of comes in and happens sometimes. And it's like, and I think that you also have to have just this really open mindset because I never intended to run anything other than North Florida, right? Like that but I didn't not have a different plan. I just figured that that's where it would go, right? And then it kind of went to Georgia and then the Carolinas and then Hawaii. Right? And you're like, "Oh, okay, well, this is interesting." And so I think, like, you almost just have to have this kind of non-linear path in your head about your growth, and I think that you have to just constantly grow and change who you are, and not at your core, but, like, how you perceive business in the world and in the size of your organization, that has to change all the time.
Okay. How do you go from one state to the next? How does that how does that happen?
Wishing and praying. No, I'm kidding. Somebody said, and this is really funny to me because it's true, is that you guys mastered the spray and pray method, like spray paint. Like we're just gonna just right. Um, it's not for everyone. So what I would tell you is like there's always this when do I know? And I don't know that there will ever be like a flashing neon sign that says, now it's time to expand somewhere else. What I know is that if you get into a market and you're having a lot of success, you're going to start getting calls about markets around you or referrals, right? So, like, I think a really good place to start is again, I'm in Milwaukee. If I have agents coming to me constantly saying, okay, who do we know in Northern Chicago? Who do we know in Madison, right? I'm going to start paying attention to that and saying, okay, well, if you keep coming to me for Northern Chicago, and I say this because we've had like 5 referrals in the past couple weeks. So something's going on in Northern Chicago, right? So maybe let's start looking at what that would look like instead of 25%. Right? We can earn a little bit more. And so I think that that is one sign that maybe it's time to start, expanding. I think if your life starts to lead you other places. So for instance, like in my world, I lived in Florida. I met someone, right? Lives in Milwaukee, can't move. Well, okay, I need a tie to Florida somehow because I need to be able to get back there when it's cold, right? So I think that like life can also be that. But I also think that like you have to ask yourself a lot of questions, I think, before you get ready to do something like this, because I think that the idea of it is very sexy, right? Like, "Ooh, we operate in multiple markets." People are like, "Oh, tell me more." Um, it's hard. It's really hard, and there's a lot of different rules. So, like, 1, do you have the revenue where you are to be able to spend some money? Because that's what's going to have to happen. You have to invest in leads, you have to invest in platform costs, and it may not work. And so are you also comfortable losing? I mean, I think that that's right. And it's really hard to do when you've been winning for a long time in one place. And so I think that's the first question to ask yourself. And I think the second is how comfortable are you with your time being spent somewhere else? Because you cannot, and I learned this, you have to be able to show up at least sometimes in different markets, right? So, like, the majority of my job was traveling around seeing our people. And so if it's an hour or 2 drive, that's a lot easier than a 4-hour flight. And so those are kind of the things that I would look at when starting. But I do think that the signs are kind of there if you have a lot of referral traffic to an area nearest you. And if you maybe have like life things that are happening in other locations.
Okay. And if that person, you kinda need a partner in that new location too, right?
I mean,
Right.
yeah. And one of the biggest and hardest things we did was solo agent expansion. Right? Because when I say that, we might have leads in Lexington, Kentucky. I have to go find an agent in Lexington, Kentucky. And what tends to happen is you hire agents. Agents are social creatures. I don't care if you're part of a brokerage that isn't brick and mortar. There's still a need to have some level of togetherness, and everybody does, right? At like a brokerage level. So if I'm hiring a person and I don't have another person for them, I just spent all this money and built this, and my potential to lose them is very high. So, what I would tell you is when you're identifying talent, identifying a couple of people maybe that know one another, or even finding a super small team that maybe is really having struggle with continually paying for systems and continually, because you have like the mind of a rainmaker there, a team leader. But maybe they just don't have that lift that they're looking for and they're tired of having to figure it out. Like those would be where I would go. It's really risky to hire just one person.
Yeah. Yeah. That and how do you keep agents, like in a market like this where
Mm.
we've got, it's the number of transactions have shrunk, right? We're, 6 million on average down to 4.7 this year. Buyers are throwing in the towel more deals are falling apart. How do you keep agents moving when everything gets squished?
I think it's really interesting. I think that in the absence of a plan, a lot of frustration happens. And I think that as teams and team owners, we have to present people with a plan. And that's like a daily plan, that's a structure. I think that what really happens where the burn becomes almost unmanageable is when we don't have a plan, right? And when I say that, what does your day look like every single day? What are you doing in placing accountability around it? Because if we can create enough conversations and we can create enough momentum, we are going to have a result. And I think that what happens is we don't do that. It's like, oh, 3 hours of lead gen, set an appointment. What we started doing was, okay, at 8:30, we have a huddle, right? Now we are multiple time zones. So I'm on multiple huddles, right? That's just the life that I chose. Nonetheless, they're getting a huddle at 8:30 there. And then we go on to lead gen, and this is what we do from here to here. And this is who we're calling, not just like, okay, go, right? But this is who we're calling, and this is the conversation that we're having. And then we're getting into what an afternoon looks like. So we're down to like morning routines, right? Like structure of the morning, lead gen, structure of the afternoon, and kind of going through that. And I think that when you can bring that to people along with leads and coaching and accountability, it will help them get through this and it'll help you get through it too. Because as a team owner, there's no difference. We're in the same compression, right? Like it's worse maybe because especially if you're multi-market, like we had the pleasure and displeasure, right, of being in some of the hardest hit markets in the country. They were the best in COVID. It was amazing, right? And they were also the first to go in. So like you're compounding pressure across markets. And so when you can participate in that with them every day, it keeps everybody focused and purposeful. And I think that that's the biggest thing we can do right now.
Yeah. I'm just loving this conversation. It's so good. This is so good. I'm thinking about the agent that needs to have a team because their business is just maxed out and
Yeah.
they're on fire, but they're burning out. But they don't want to have a team, right? Like they'll just say, like, I don't want to have a team, but I'll be miserable the rest of my life, but I don't want to have a team. What do you say to that agent? Like, what they're afraid of the team for some reason, right? Like, what do you say to them?
What I would say to that agent is I think that it's a really scary thing to hand over your perceived freedom, right? Like I think that a lot of the fight there is I don't want someone telling me what to do or I don't want someone like one thing that we saw a lot of was branding, right? Like I've kind of become who I am in my market. So we allowed that to continue. Doesn't always happen. But one of the things that I would say is that's the biggest fear. And when we address that fear, right? If I can get you your time back, and if I can get you your money back, like, yes, I understand that there is a split to me. And what are you paying every month for coaching, for leads, for all of these systems? What if we can get you your time and your money, right, back so that you can live life the way that you want to live it and actually do more deals? Because teams have access to more leads. It's just the reality, right? We have access to continuity of systems, right? We don't have to worry about do I pay for this for 6 months, shut it off, and then go buy this thing? Because that's what happens when you're in production. And so to that agent, I would say that a lot of that is fear-based. And what can we look at? If we can sit down and actually look at your business and then what we can take off of your plate, now we can deposit that back as revenue and time.
Beautiful. So
And I
it's
think that
almost
having that conversation is huge.
yeah. It's almost like they're instead of being afraid of the unknown, they're afraid of the known changing, right? Like what they currently know is changing and that's what they're afraid of. Like,
100%. I think that the direction of the industry is teams, right? We've seen some of the largest team mergers ever to happen in the last 12 months. And I think that you'll keep seeing them because, again, the bigger a team can get, the more opportunity it has. And so when I look at that, I'm like, if I were a solo agent today, and this isn't coming from someone just team perspective, I would 100% jump on the opportunity of a team because the overhead to me for being a single agent is so huge and the time commitment for managing all of that is so big that I would just want someone else to manage it. And I think that you're right. I think it's the fear around the change. And I think that there's the fear around the lack of control. But I think that's perception that's out there about teams and not the reality of most.
yeah. Do you think teams are here for the long haul? Like
I do.
I think by now I think they are, but and I think that's a question that some agents ask is like, are teams good and are they here? And I think if we're doing what we're talking about here today, they're definitely good, right?
I think that it's unfortunate because there are instances where I think people have had bad experiences, but I also think that like the evolution of the team has been kind of happening for the last 10 years. And so I think if you joined 10 years ago versus today, it'd be two totally different types of experiences. But I 100% believe that they're here to stay. And I do believe that the teams that figure out the onboarding, the leads, and a true value proposition will continue just getting larger, merging with others, right? Like there's a team here in Wisconsin that has merged 2 times in the last 12 months into bigger and bigger and bigger. And all they're doing is merging systems and revenue opportunity, right? Like that's all they're doing. And the more they do that, the better it is for the agent. And so I think you'll see more and more of that. And I think that teams will become more and more important. Like I think that there is a world where teams become larger than the brokerages that they're housed in.
I see that as well. What do you think? This will, I think you already answered this question, but like the teams that are going to make it versus the teams that are not, what's the big
Yeah.
difference there?
I think the teams that will make it are teams that understand that it's a partnership. I think that anything that you build right now, it's a partnership, right? Like we need to provide the systems, the tools, the model for the agent. The agent supplying, right, their SOI, their local knowledge, all of that. And that's where I think it can go incredibly wrong. Like I think that teams who don't face this like a partnership are the teams that will go away. I think the teams that are very much like, hey, we're here to be your leverage. We're not here to control what you're doing, are going to keep thriving. And I think that that's where agents get attracted. They're like, oh, I can keep my branding. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do that. Then they're like, oh, cool. Right. And they just kind of jump in where that kind of like control, that's going to be a little bit tougher. There's a difference between accountability and control. And so I think that the teams that can figure out the partnership, the leverage, that piece, they will continue just excelling and getting larger. And I think teams that are kind of there to serve the team owner will go away.
You said something profound there. Accountability is different than control. Can you expand on that too? I can't stop asking you questions. This is
Yeah. So I think that for me, it's so interesting because I've come across just so many different models and so many different types of team owners. And I always have, before I say this, I have massive respect for anybody who's built anything because I know how hard it is. I just think that when we come at it from a perspective of creating it like a job, right? Where we're trying to control every single thing the agent does and tying we have to remember they're 1099.
right. Right.
Right. And I think that you can be an accountability partner and have way better outcomes than being a controlling boss type of role. And when you're saying, okay, you need to do this and you need to do that, and you need to do that, a lot of the time you're getting pushback because agents are not typically the type that have done well with a job, right? Like I can't tell you as a corporate employee, you don't want to hire me. You don't. Like I will go really hard for you and I'm an absolute killer. And corporate role is not me. And that's it, right? Like I am a failed corporate employee. That's how I know. And, I think that when we have accountability, right, which is through coaching and goal oriented, like this is what you told me you wanted. These are the things that we need to do to get there. We're not doing them what's happening? Like, did we really want it? Is there a disconnect versus you must do this and you have to do that? I think that that's two very different things. And I think that one leads to thriving and the other one leads to separation, quite honestly.
Yes, yes. Marissa, this is amazing. This is amazing. Thank you so much, man. We have covered so much here today. What's some final words that you would say to somebody that wants to start a team or maybe is in the middle, has a team right now, but they feel defeated?
Mm.
What's some advice that you would give them?
I would tell them that it never won't feel difficult, like whatever level you're at, right? Whether it's starting, whether it's the middle, whether it's I made it to 1,000 agents, you're always going to be having some level of fear. And I think that you just have to get really, really good at embracing the fear and staring it straight in the face and just pushing through to the next level of growth. I mean, I had it the other day. I left a very big, very sure thing and relaunching something, right? And I I was driving down the road and I was like, "Oh my god, what am I doing? This is crazy. Like, I did this once. I'm going to do this again. What if this? What if that?" And then I was like, who are, like, stop. Right. And I think that you have to like entertain it. Like, I think you have to stay healthily paranoid. Like, I think there has to be like a certain level of what if there. But I also think that you have to take that voice and you have to use it as fuel and you have to just go do it. And what I would tell you, like everything we talked about, just do something, right? Like, just start. If you're a medium-sized team and your onboarding process, you hear this and you're like, "Oh my god, I have to go totally redo that." Just take it one step at a time, right? If you're looking to start a team, just do it. Go hire that showing assistant, right? And the rest will kind of come into place. I think we get so busy being in the fear, like what I just described that I had the other day, that we're like, "Oh, and then I have to have a plan." And as a high D, that's not who I am, but sometimes that starts to happen to me if I'm in that space. So you have to push forward and just take the step and do one thing. You have
Thank
to
you.
get addicted to doing one more thing, right?
One more thing. Yeah, we just talked about that book. That's a great book, by the
Yep,
way.
it's a great book.
Yes, yes. Marissa, this has been a treat. I thank you so
Well, thank
much,
you.
and I know the listeners thank you as well. This has been amazing. So thanks again.
Well, thank you. I was excited to do it. So, great conversation, and I look forward to hopefully having more.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All
Thanks
right.
again. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day. And like always, remember to be the reason somebody smiles today.